You know, I didn't know that, I think I'm actually here. I didn't know that I was going to be speaking to the Emerging Creatives track into a couple of weeks ago, and I was so excited because I envisioned coming into this room and just looking out into a basket of kittens. I'm really thrilled to be here, and thanks to Facebook and Kat Gordon for asking me. My name is Megan. I'm 49 and a half years old, and I used to want to be an astronaut and an artist and an archaeologist and Wonder Woman when I grew up. But it turns out the first chapter of my adult life, I founded and ran a tech business. And now in the second chapter, I have a lot of different roles. I'm an audio and digital producer, content strategist, whatever the hell that really means to you, and a story enabler. I'm originally from Alabama, and I wanted to tell you that because I've been told I have 20 minutes to talk to you about the art and craft of storytelling and the Moth. And if you know a Southerner, you know this is a damn hardship to have a time limit, because I can barely tell you what I had for lunch yesterday in 20 minutes. So we're just gonna commence to go deep pretty quickly. How many of you, show of hands, know about the Moth, know what the Moth is? Oh, great, great. And how many have not heard of the Moth, just so I can get kind of a quick visual? Wonderful, okay, so for those few people, the Moth is a nonprofit storytelling organization, and it's headquartered here in New York City. And it was actually founded by a writer and a raconteur, George Dawes Green, also a Southerner. That was good. Also a Southerner. So he and his colleagues got together and managed to do something pretty terrific with personal storytelling. They elevated it into an art form by giving a storyteller a mic and a platform and a stage, and the rest, as they say, is history. I'm looking for a clicker. Where would it be? So it would go to the next slide if I had a clicker. There we go. So the Moth's mission, official mission, is to promote the art and craft of storytelling and to honor and celebrate the diversity and commonality of human experience. And I really love this quote from Catherine Burns. She's the artistic director at the Moth. The Moth actually has a book that came out this past year. It's our 20th anniversary. And this is a quote from the book. And I love her so much, and not just because she is also from Alabama. She just has a gift for eliciting stories from people. And I just found out that the next speaker coming up, Stephanie, told a story at a Moth main stage and worked with Catherine. So that's kind of a treat to find out that she actually had worked with Catherine on the Moth main stage. So if you know the Moth, you know we have a variety of different storytelling modes. There's the podcast, there's the radio show, there is the main stage, which is a, thank you, clicker, I am now clickified. The Moth main stage, which is a curated storytelling event where storytellers are selected around a theme. We also have community and education programs that are really fantastic. And then we have what I do. I'm the regional producer in San Francisco, and I produce the open mic storytelling events called Story Slams and Grand Slams. And how many of you have been to one of the live events? Great. All right, so some of you may have seen this also in the last episode of the next to the last season of Girls, right? When Hannah gets on stage to tell a story at the Moth. The open mic events have themes, and anybody in the community can come up and put their name in the hat and tell a 5-minute personal, true story without notes. And I have to tell you, I've been doing this for about 2 years, and when I first got into it, I've done improv comedy, I've been a producer for a while, I've been a writer. I thought I knew what to expect. But I have to say, I was really surprised at the power and the potency of these live events. Because what I discovered in this live format is that stories, no matter what, like what's at their core, if they're a happy story, sad story, a really good one, melds the heart, the mind, and the soul in a really noble way. I think a goal of good storytelling and what comes out of a good story is that it makes an impression on you, the listener or the reader, while it's happening, and that impression remains. And I'm not sure if storytelling can change people, but I do think it opens you and softens you. And that's why we all enjoy those driveway moments, right? They open us up a little bit. They take us out of our daily grind. So what makes a good story? I have this example up here. This is from E.M. Forster, and I'm going to tell you straight off the bat, you can whip out your smartphone, you can go to your computer, and you can Google what makes a good story, and you're going to get a lot of different answers, right? Like this speaking here is not the Bible. There are a lot of different ways to break down the elements of a good story. E.M. Forster has a definition. He says that a sequence of events is a story. The king died and then the queen died. But when you add in details, when you add in scenery, when you add in emotion, then it becomes a plot. The king died and the queen died of grief. And I love this example because I'm sitting there thinking like, wow, he must have been a really awesome king. He must have been really good and bad. They must have loved each other forever. Maybe he died young. Maybe they grew old together. But it really opens up a window into the world. And I think small details, this is just 2 words, right? Small details like these are like magnets. They attach you to the story. So I'm going to dive right in and give you an example of one of our San Francisco storytellers. This is a clip from Neshama Franklin's Grand Slam winning story, A Fish Out of Water.
Good. Yes. So there I was on the stage, stark naked. And it wasn't a dream, it was real life. But it wasn't really a stage. It was a kind of grimy, carpeted platform. And I wasn't completely naked. I had a homemade G-string on. What was I, a mother of young children, doing at the Roaring Twenties nightclub in 1967 in San Francisco?
Now I'm going to pause it right there. She does a great job of setup. Those details, those tiny magnets. There was a grimy platform. There was a homemade G-string. You know that she's the mother of 2 kids. She's really immersing you in her world. You get to do a ride-along, in essence, with Neshama for the story. So it makes you more invested in the tale that she's going to tell. And so I'm going to go ahead and play the end of her story.
I had some trepidation about what would happen when I took the caftan off. I was afraid they would laugh. And they did. But I had prepared myself for this. I did a kind of a keto flip in my head, and I decided that I was projecting irony because it was so ridiculous what we were doing up there. So I did the hippie dance of love, very camp, and they loved it, and so did I. And I thought, maybe this could be my real career. 25 a night, and a lot of time to read in the dressing room. And I forgot about some realities like time, The Summer of Love was not called the Summer of Love for nothing. And gravity, the nubile body, would start to sag. And reality, because the dance was getting a little stale. We were doing the same thing every night. And you remember those children? I would come home really revved up and kind of go to sleep and then have to get up and take them to co-op nursery school early in the morning. I knew when it was over. I handed my G-string and kaftan to the next person in line. That was Meredith. That's Meredith Monk. Some people may know her as an amazing choreographer and composer. And she comes to the West Coast periodically, and I check in with her. We sit around the table after the performance, and she's surrounded by her acolytes. They all have designer glasses and black turtlenecks. And she looked at me and she said, "Hey, Neshama, you remember when you gave me my first G-string?" And their jaws just sagged. Yeah, of course I remember. You know why? Because I believe we are all like Russian nesting dolls. And everything we've done and everything we've been is right inside us. You just twist off the top and lift it out. It's intact. So just know, when you look at an old lady with frizzy gray hair, you have no idea what she's been up to. Or for that matter, what she's really thinking. Thank you.
Oh my goodness.
Neshama Franklin.
She is so fabulous. There needs to be a new word for fabulous. I'm not kidding. Like, wonderful. It almost makes me wish I'd gotten a hand-me-down G-string. She makes that sound good, you know? Hashtag Neshama goals is what I'm saying. I think that this is a compelling example because of Neshama's vitality, her personality. She's really getting you to see her and her world and understand her life. And she's able to paint a picture of transformation, right? Like, she allows you to see the moment that she was self-conscious and how she flipped the script and overcame it, and how she started to accept her own reality of being a mom, of aging, and then, of course, later on, of being an older person and having this wonderful knowledge inside herself that, yes, she once danced the hippie dance of love in a homemade G-string in San Francisco. It's those details that make this so incredibly vivid and present for the listener. So I'm going to give you an acronym. I think this is one of the more useful ways I've found to talk about storytelling. This actually comes from the improv world, and it's CROW, very easy to remember. C stands for character. That's the people involved, obviously. And you, if you're the storyteller, and if you're a Moth storyteller, you should be the central character in your tale. How do we see the characters? How do we see you? R is for relationship. The relationship of the characters to each other, to their surroundings, also maybe to their audience. O is for objective, and sometimes this is said the goal, like it's the goal, but it's what are the people trying to accomplish? What's going to happen in the story? You know, an essay is different than a story. In a story, something has to change. W is where. Where does this take place? This is really important because it grounds a story in a credible reality, and it works for real, true stories just as it works for science fiction. Creating and populating that scene, that reality, helps bring in your audience. It brings them along with you. And then the E sometimes isn't used, but I really think it's key, is emotion. What are the characters feeling? How do you want your audience to feel? And most importantly, as I was just saying, where do the emotions change? So a great example of this is going to be in another clip that I brought along. Omar Qureshi is a wonderful storyteller. He's actually a stand-up comedian. He lives in the Bay Area. He goes to Stanford. And he has performance chops, right? It is not his first rodeo to get up in front of a bunch of people and talk into a microphone. But telling a good story is not about being performative. It's not about performing the story. It's about letting that emotion shine through. And the clip I'm going to play is the end clip from a story he told. Omar grew up in Missouri and was one of only a few Muslim families. And he wrestled with the complicated relationship that he had with his hometown, you know, feeling alienated, of feeling isolated, of wanting to belong. And he was living on the East Coast and heard that the mosque where he and his family, where his parents worshiped, had been burned to the ground.
I couldn't let myself think of the reality before me. I couldn't let myself acknowledge what I knew might have happened. And finally, at 6 in the morning, my time, my dad calls me back and says, "Look, what's going on?" I said, "Are you alive?" And he was like, I think this phone call settles it. And he was alive and everyone is fine. The arsonist burned it down later. And you know, a few years later, they released the security camera tape. We had security. We knew that something like this might happen. And it was in black and white. And so the flames burn extra bright. And the faces are just dark, and you can just see their pupils and their teeth. And I saw this guy look up at the camera and smile as he poured more gasoline on, and the next thing you saw was that fire started. And I knew then that we couldn't be in Missouri anymore. That the place that I loved, the place that I grew up, would not have us. And I knew at that point that there was no way in hell I was going to let my father and the community there rebuild the mosque. So when I returned, we went to Black Cat Lane, which is where the mosque was, and all that was left was a mailbox. And in that mailbox, there was a letter from a man. And the man said there was a tornado in Joplin 2 years ago. It was one of the worst tornadoes in like the history of the country. And there was an ER that was backed up, and so we held our own clinic there. It was free for everybody. And the man said, "My daughter's head was hurt, my wife's face was cut, and the ER wouldn't take us, but you did. I don't understand your religion. I don't understand what you stand for, but what I understand is this. In the time that you needed us, and the time that we needed you, we failed you, but you delivered to us." And in that moment, I realized that love in Missouri, it hurts, but it's worth it.
It still amazes me every time I watch that clip, and you know, I worked putting together this presentation, and I talked to Omar a lot, but what's beautiful about his story and why it was so moving is the performance aspect slips a little bit. Did you hear it? Yeah? Maybe, right? When he was like, "There's no way in hell." He knew he wasn't going to let his parents go back there. Like, there was no way in hell he was going to let them rebuild the mosque. And then another changing, transformative moment when he found the letter. Omar is wonderful. He actually now has gone on to be in main stage events. And has really come into his own as a storyteller and allowing that emotion to peek out of the performative aspect of his other life as a stand-up comedian. So we've looked at two stories, one which had example of great character. Neshama is a great character. She set up the wear very well. You could see that platform, the grimy G-string that she had. Omar, who had a lot of emotion and also kind of set up the wear, the small Missouri town where he lived. But I think the other thing, the other key ingredient in telling a good live story is bravery. And when I say bravery, I mean it's the willingness to leave it all on the stage, to be witnessed by your audience as if they were your friends. And I think that's what George Dawes Green really wanted when he took the storytelling format of like sitting out on a front porch or around a campfire, around a kitchen table, and then elevate it to the stage. This last clip I'm going to play is Dee Dee Lumbergh. She was in our Grand Slam, and our Grand Slams are held in this huge, historic, beautiful theater in the Castro district. It's the Castro Theater. It is where the winners of the Story Slams, the Grand Slam is where the winners of the Story Slams all come to compete against each other and be crowned the winner of the Grand Slam. It's not like they get anything. They get like a trophy and a plaque. But it's gorgeous. It has, I think it's also the largest in the country. You know, we do live Moth storytelling events in over 25 cities internationally. So this was from last year, and I have actually put together two clips from Dee Dee's story from the Grand Slam.
I spent my 21st birthday in the emergency room as my college best friend gave birth to a kidney stone that we named Emma. Emma Stone. That was also the day that I held her hand for the first time. I had wanted to hold her hand for a while, wanted to do other things for a while too, like kiss her or tell her how I had accidentally fallen in love with her. We'd only known each other for 8 months, but I was drawn to her intoxicating blend of charisma and kindness from the moment that I met her. It took me 6 months of wondering if I had done friendship wrong my entire life. Was this sort of intensity normal between female friends? Before it dawned on me that what I was feeling was something different, something more. But something more wasn't possible for us. She was straight, and I was only just beginning to realize that I was apparently bisexual. Taking chances was never my forte, so it seemed far safer to preserve our friendship as it was than to risk everything by telling her how I felt. She laughed and said, "Do you remember that time when I had a kidney stone? And you came to the hospital and held my hand and took care of me? Well, I had a crush on you then already, but that's when I knew I loved you." It was such a surreal experience, feeling the axis of my life rotate with one simple exchange. All of the anxiety that had plagued me for months shifted into a sea of butterflies aflutter in my stomach. And as I kissed her for the first time, finally, it felt so right. And you know what? It still feels right. It's been a number of years since that night, and she remains my favorite person, my best friend. My grandmother once told me that the smartest decision she ever made in her life was to marry her best friend. So Carrie Ann. Will you marry me?
That was an amazing night. I cannot even imagine what it felt like to have 1,400 people give you a rush of love in honor of your love. It was absolutely tremendous. So I want to wrap up with another quote from Catherine, and something to ask from each of you. You shouldn't think that in order to be a good storyteller that you have to be an extrovert. Storytelling events are wonderful things for introverts to do. There's something about the distance, that little bit of distance between you and the audience, the protection of not exactly being able to see who you're talking to, that provides a buffer that allows you to connect in a one-to-many way that is really incredible. So I want to encourage all of you to go to themoth.org and find a live storytelling event and find a theme that speaks to you and go tell a story, because now you've got Crow. You know you've got some time to screw your courage to the sticking point, and to go and be brave and be vulnerable in front of a group of people, because it's a gift. It's a gift that you give to them, and it's a gift that you can give yourself. As creatives in the ad industry, you're always going to be telling other people's stories. And I think even if you don't tell a story, if you go to some of these events, these live face-to-face events, it's kind of an antidote. I'd like to think that it keeps you from getting burned out. It keeps you from being drawn down into the flat planes of the digital, where everybody's either indignant or polished or perfect, and gives you back some little pieces of humanity and connection that we can hold on to. So just to let you know, here in New York City, if you're here from New York, here are some upcoming dates and themes for the Moth. November 6th is Promises. November 16th is Revelations. November 29th is Fakes. December 1 is Dirt. December 4th is Obsessions. The 7th is a main stage. So there's probably still time to get tickets. I think it's a wonderful thing. I'll be around for the rest of the day. Go to themoth.org, tune into our radio show, tune into our podcast, and have a storytelling-worthy week. Thank you.